I'd like to call this meeting to order, and if everyone that is able would stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning and good morning, everyone. This is the Morrison County Board of Commissioners meeting, and I would now look for an approval of the county board minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Ms. Tabitha, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Not at this time.
Very
So
good.
moved.
Got a motion. I'd look for a second.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the agenda? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Our next item is listed as number 5 on our agenda. It's Crane Meadows, and I see Steve is with us this morning. Steve, you just want to take a chair? And have at it. You're on.
Morning, Steve.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members.
Good morning.
Well, for those that don't know me, I'm Steve Carl. I'm the refuge manager out at Crane Meadows National Wildlife Refuge. I'm stationed out of Sherburne National Wildlife Refuge because it's a complex, and that's where most of the staff is over there. The reason I wanted to come in today is I wanted to give you a couple updates of what's going on at the refuge. And one of the things that we have going right now we're working on is a hunt plan revision. For those that may not know, our current hunt plan basically doesn't allow the refuge to be open to hunting other than a few special hunts on just only 3 of the units. There's about 12 to 13 parcels that make up the refuge. And one of the things that we're doing is making a revision. A lot of this is some of this comes from the Secretary of the Interior wanting to improve hunting and fishing opportunities in the nation, and it's also because we feel that this refuge would provide a great hunting opportunity for a lot of folks. Right now, we only have hunters with disability, deer hunt, and youth hunts are the only thing that we have. We have had, just last October, we had great success with our hunters with disabilities, and that's been a really positive thing, and we want to continue that even with this new plan revision. As we continue moving forward with our draft hunt plan, where our goals is that we want to align more with the state of Minnesota, the DNR, with species and regulations, and so a lot of the species that the state hunts and allows will probably be what we're going to propose to move towards with the refuge. One of the issues we have is some of the areas that we have on the refuge aren't surveyed, and so we're working on that, trying to get those areas surveyed, and this new hunt plan would take that into account as these areas are surveyed, that they would then become open. We don't want to allow opening of hunting areas where there could be possibility of trespass on private land, so we want to make sure we know where our boundaries are. And then any new parcels that are acquired would be open to hunting immediately. So in a refuge system, when refuge lands are established, they're close to hunting until you open them, which is a long process. With this new hunt plan, we'll be able to open the areas immediately once they're acquired, if any new land is acquired. Once this draft is completed, it'll be open for public comment, and there'll be a public meeting available for that, and that should be in the newspapers and be out available for the public to respond. We feel that this additional hunting opportunities obviously would bring in more dollars to the county and provide the community, the hunters in the community, more opportunities. Another topic I wanted to share is that the refuge only expands currently in our comprehensive conservation plan. The refuge can only expand if there's willing sellers, if somebody wants to sell their land to the service, and so one option we're considering is going for funding with the Migratory Bird Conservation Fund, which is basically duck stamp dollars. We have 2 parcels that are currently in the process of with the willing sellers being interested in selling, And what they fall in with the approved acquisition boundary that we currently have. So we're looking at possibly going after funding from this conservation fund, Migratory Bird Conservation Fund, and using that, which would have to be approved by the DNR, state and the DNR, and also the governor. This funding source basically mandates that there's waterfowl hunting opportunities open, but it's the good thing about it is it's not appropriated funding that comes from our federal budget, and so these dollars are basically like new dollars or duck stamp dollars. 98 cents out of every dollar goes to a land acquisition for refuges, so it's not taken away from federal dollars in any other way.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? Steve, when do you think that will take place, or what's the timeline for that acquisition?
So I think they only meet a couple times a year in like June or April or June. I think we're looking at June, potentially trying to get in front of the Migratory Bird Council and see if we can get that funding source. One of the things that will lay the groundwork is having a different hunt plan in place. So if we have that hunt plan completed or at least in place in the process of moving forward, that'll help strengthen our potential to get that funding. So basically, as I mentioned, this new funding source will bring new dollars to the county. And then the best part about it is that those hunters that are in the community that put their dollars towards duck stamps are going to get rewarded by having that money come back to them with additional hunting opportunities, and that funding can be used. The two parcels that we're currently looking at are mostly wet meadow habitat with little to no agriculture value. So they have a tremendous wildlife value, and hunter value. So we're pretty excited about that. As I mentioned, it would require state DNR and governor approval to go after this. So our timeline is hopefully we'll have a draft plan here in mid-January, and then we can try to move forward with the public meetings and keep the process going. Any questions or comments?
Steve, are these properties actually currently attached or right next to borderline the current Crane Meadows?
Yes, that's my overall goal, I guess, is that when we have willing sellers that connect up those parcels, it makes it basically a larger piece of land that hunters can access. And one of them I mentioned earlier was a Pappenfuss property.
Yep.
And the other one, I want to reserve that comment or the name until we get further along. But anyway, those parcels would basically connect the refuge and make it a better parcel, a piece, and then it also, that way allows us to open those pieces together and connect them. Right now, a lot of these parcels are spread, and it makes it difficult to open them up and for people to know where the refuge actually is. So
Sure.
It's a good connection.
Sure.
Mr.
Questions?
Chair, maybe you answered this and I didn't hear it, but what about taxes? When you take land from somebody else that's paying taxes, is that where the PILT payments come in?
Yeah, that's in lieu of taxes is a revenue sharing. So those dollars come to the county in lieu of taxes. Most of the lands that we're looking at are probably little value, tax value, mainly because they're not agriculture. So I don't think there's taken a large amount of tax base away from the county. And what's hard to put on paper, but there's been studies done, is how much revenue that brings to the county of people coming to the refuge. And I think with the hunting opportunities improving, that'll change and make it definitely a lot more folks come into the area.
Mr. Chair, how many acres would you look at potentially that could be open?
So right now the refuge is about 2,100 acres. And there's a 13,000 something, I don't remember the actual number, acre acquisition boundary that's been approved. But there's only 2,100 acres that are actually refuge right now. And then it's approximately 270 acres, I believe, in addition that we're looking at for this, with this migratory bird fund to acquire. So it's not a large part, a large amount of land, but there is a lot of different parcels with a lot of different hunting opportunities on them.
It's beautiful. I mean, the acreage back there is just amazing how, I don't know, attractive it is to those waterfowl hunters. So I'm glad you're pursuing it.
You mentioned 13,000 acres. Can you expand on that just a little tiny bit?
Well, when refuges are established, when they're originally established, there's an acquisition boundary that I don't exactly know how they come up with this number, but there's an acquisition boundary that fits with the parameters of the refuge. And so when the Congress approves these refuges, they say that this is the acquisition boundary. We're not allowed to go outside that acquisition boundary without Congress approval. With being willing sellers, it being our main way of acquiring land, I mean, it's probably not likely that will ever even happen. But it's the parcels that connect to the refuge currently are definitely the ones that I'm most interested in, because they build that refuge property and easier to manage for us to do our management, prescribed fire or grazing or whatever we want to do for the management actions.
Thank you.
With a new addition that I wanted to mention is that we also are going to have a new employee. For most of you know that Ron Beam is a maintenance guy out there, only guy out there that's actually on site all the time. We're not going to add a person out there all the time, but we will be adding another management person that'll be stationed at Sherburne. But her responsibilities will be predominantly Crane Meadows, so she'll be probably there quite a bit more and give Ron some more support. That's been one of our biggest issues, is that our federal budget doesn't allow us to have to refill a lot of the positions, and so this is a youth program that we have, a DFP, Director's Fellow Program, I think it stands for, and this person is being assigned to come to our refuge complex. So we're pretty excited about actually getting to add a person to our staff here to help.
Please, when that person is on board, stop back in and say hi.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. And then lastly, I guess I want to invite you all to the Habitat Day on March 9th. And I think I brought this up last time I was here. It's a day when the tremendous amount of the public community come out to the refuge to build wood duck boxes and bluebird boxes. I mean, it's incredible how many people we get to this, what we call a small event. But we have 500 to 700 people that come out there and see the refuge and participate in the snowshoeing and other things that are going on that day, building boxes. And we've been adding on and improving our environmental classroom over there, the Sedge Meadow classroom that's attached to the shop. We just got insulation in the roof, and we're hoping to be able to get some heat in there. The Friends of Crane Meadows have been helping out with funding on that, and a lot of the community obviously have been supporting that activity. So we'll have an opportunity to have an educational classroom, hopefully complete in the next year or two, depending on how the funding comes in. But they've been really supportive. And I guess I'd like to invite the board out at some point, maybe spring or another time that would work, and we can do a tour or some kind of information time and let you give you more information about the refuge and show you around a little bit. So we can kind of keep connected on that if you're interested, and maybe we can have a special tour that we can get out and show you the refuge.
That would be wonderful.
So that's all I really have for today.
All right, Steve, any questions from the board for Steve?
Thank you.
Steve, thank you very kindly for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our next item of business is going to be the public health report. Brad is here. Good morning, Brad.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Good morning. I have one item for you today, and that is a new on-sale intoxicating liquor license for Falls Ballroom. They have decided to move away from 3-2 and wine and go to on-sale, which only requires one license versus the 3 that they had before. So this will be effective from January 1st, and all the background checks have been completed. I'll make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
That's all I have this morning, Mr. Chair.
That was pretty quick.
Yeah,
Thanks,
pretty
Brad.
quick.
Thank you very kindly.
Christmas present.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Christmas present, yes. Thank you. Appreciate it. And our next item of business is veterans. And I thought I saw Kathy. Kathy is here.
We got pretty papers for y'all.
And good morning, Kathy.
Good morning. Randy, I don't have my walking stick.
All right, I didn't recognize you.
I know, pretty excited about that, actually. But,
I'm thinking you're kind of glad you threw that away, or are
yeah.
able to.
Or, yeah, I still got to use it long distance walks, but yeah, we're good. So, feels good to do that. So, just a little updates to what we've been doing, all kinds of things, and I first want to just commend my staff. I was on medical leave for about almost 8 weeks, and so it was nice that they did an outstanding job and had lots of compliments that everything kept running smoothly while I was not there. So that was really nice. And ever since I've been back, I've been busy, so there's where we got a lot of updates. I've been working with a lot of different organizations, partnering with community health assessment team. We're working on ways to, we've been doing that throughout the last year here with like public health and some other community assets, working on improving healthy lives for our children in our community and putting up some signs up at Pine Grove Park and some things, and it's been some cool things that they've been doing. So that's been fun working with that team of individuals. And also working with a stakeholders group out of, out of social services and the jail, working on improving as people are coming out of jail, how do we help them? So a lot of the times that can also be veterans. So my piece of that puzzle is how are we going to help them and get them on the right track so that they aren't going back into those type of situations and getting in trouble. So I think that's a great thing that we're doing in our county, and that will be beneficial for everyone. Also working with Region 5 Yellow Ribbon Group, and I'm also part of the Morrison County group. Last night we had a meeting and we talked about we've got a very strong Yellow Ribbon group in Morrison County, so that's a great thing that we have for our community, because there's a lot of other cities within the Region 5 that don't have one at all. So we end up sometimes picking up those pieces and helping some of those individuals, but trying to help them figure out how they can improve lives of veterans. And one of the things we talk about as well is they get some money from Sourcewell, and maybe we can incorporate that with some of the things that we're trying to do with jail and social services, helping those inmates that come out of legal situations and helping improve, because that's part of our thing is we want to help families of military veterans live better lives, because if that person isn't straightened out, then it affects everyone around them. So there might be some places that we can get some funding as well from that. So we're working on that piece. And Region 5 also working with the transportation group, and that is just trying to figure out some ways for transportation to be improved all the way around in Region 5 to make it easier. And when I was on medical leave, I tried like the TRICAP transportation just to see how it works. I called in to see how does this work if I want to get a ride from my house to Little Falls Orthopedics. And like many things, you have to press many buttons to call just to get to a human. And I'm thinking, okay, so I'm 44 years old and I'm very savvy with things, and I thought that was a little bit cumbersome and difficult. Now, what's that like for someone who has maybe some memory loss or elderly or having more significant issues?
Or is 88 years old.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was one of my things that I brought up, was we need to simplify this, so when people call in, they talk to a human being and they help them get the resources they need. So I hope that goes somewhere, who knows, but that was my input on that from a story of my own. Fall conference for CVSOs. I've been helping with a lot of teaching other CVSOs, mentorships, and also now I help develop our training for other veteran service officers within the state of Minnesota, so that's been pretty cool. Been doing that both for the state and our District 7 that I'm part of, so that's been fun. We worked with the fair booth way back in August. And then, of course, yes, I was on medical leave for a while. I already mentioned that. We have an administrative pool person. Her name's Marta Storekamp. She has been hospitalized. She was at the Mayo Clinic back in September, shortly after I left. She's doing much better. She still wants to come back at some point, but she had some very significant health issues that occurred. So she hasn't been able to help us out much, but maybe at some point. She's positive. She's now in Sartell and doing very well. So it's exciting to see her smiley face and her get up and go, and knowing that she survived a lot of very significant health issues. So that was neat. Other things, so still working on, I've been working with the disabled American veterans, trying to figure out, there's been a lot of Gulf War veterans that have issues at very young ages with, there's been stomach type issues, a lot of pain joint problems, things that maybe were from exposures, environmental exposures overseas, we don't know, but just trying to figure out and gathering data so that we can make the treatment, if anything, at the VA better for people, and also the pain management, trying to work on things that have lessen using medications, but using more natural ways through the VA to help people manage their pain, the anxiety that comes with that, the depression, those kinds of things, so that people can do that. And a lot of times maybe they're not enrolled in the VA healthcare system, but how can we help them to be able to be more stabilized with some of the conditions that they're suffering from. And been doing a lot of, attending a lot of different meetings. It's that time of year, a lot of Christmas parties and stuff with many of our veterans organizations who do a tremendous job in our county. So I thank all of the disabled American veterans, the Legions, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the Yellow Ribbons of Morrison County. They all do outstanding work and help a lot of people. It's just neat to see. We're sending out an annual newsletter that's all printed. I put that together and we got it at the printing shop. So hopefully by Christmas or the holidays, we have that sent out. And I've asked people at different meetings, we use an outreach grant to send that out. People really enjoy that. And one of the inserts that I have is that I have every veteran that gets one of these letters, I have a little insert that they can hand out to someone that they may know that does not see in our office, that should come in and see us, young, old, whatever it is, if they can come in, check in with us and see if there's entitlements that they are due. And then I am also I'm working with some other veteran service officers who are females out of Minnesota, where we have put together a women's event in February. It'll be near Duluth at the Black Bear Casino. What we're looking at is trying to help female veterans who have endured military sexual trauma or some type of trauma during service, and having it just be all women there so that they can talk in a safe environment about different issues that they're having. We have speakers. I'm going to be one of the speakers there talking with people and trying to help them to improve their lives. And so we have on, if people see the flyer, there's a little thing, no males allowed. It's not because we don't want males there. It's just that we're trying to make this an environment where they can talk freely. And there's a lot of events that are catered more for veterans, for males, fishing trips and different things, but not just women. So we're not excluding the males, but we just want to have something for the women. And then attending, we've got our District 7. I just went to one of their meetings, and I had a YouTube thing that I did through Great River Arts, and I showed that. The District 7 loved it, so we're going to cater it for all of our districts so that we can use it, and they can put it on their local TV stations as well. And so that was kind of neat that they liked that. Presented at the Little Falls High School. I did a Veterans Day thing there. We had a couple of us women that talked there. So a lot of women veterans things happening this year, but it was really, really a positive and neat thing to share our stories of things that we went through, and the other ladies deploying and missing prom and those kinds of things for her daughter. So it was quite enlightening for a lot of people. And we're working on doing a lot of gift giving and stuff. I get to dress up as Santa Claus this weekend and work with the American Legion in Little Falls with the real Santa Claus, and we get to go out and give gifts to the couple needy families. So that'll be very fun.
I'm very thankful that you brought along the real Santa Claus with you. Appreciate that.
Well, I know, yeah. I'm just in training, just in case. He needs someone else. I'm midget Santa Claus. I shouldn't say that. Vertically challenged. That's me, vertically challenged. And we've got everyone in our office now accredited with all of the veterans organizations, so we're all able to access data. And also kudos to the IT group for getting my computer fixed when I came back, because it wasn't working, and I had to get a whole new computer, actually, because I don't know if there was a virus or what happened, but I couldn't access anything. So they did an outstanding job and tackled the issues right away. So I'm thankful for that. And Then, what do we got? We've also been working on, with military retirees, there's a whole new insurance program with TRICARE that came out, and we couldn't get anyone necessarily to come in from Department of Defense, so I was asked if we could help people enroll in the different programs. So our office took the initiative to help people from the local areas to come to us and help them enroll in their dental and the new eye programs that they have, and making sure they're making the right choices. So that was great. It went well, and people were super thankful, so I'm glad. We keep continuing to get a few more people. I think that our numbers will grow as we've got a lot of deployments out right now with the National Guard, and I think when those people come back, I hope that they'll come see us, because that's one of my main goals, is whenever they do some type of active duty, they come in and see us. So these people that are deployed, I know a lot of them, and I'm like, make sure that your friends go see their CVSO, whether it's me or whomever. They take care of their issues right away. Upcoming events, I'll be talking at Horizon Health next Wednesday. We have a I'm forgetting the name of the event, isn't that terrible? But that is coming up, and talking about burial benefits. We'll be talking about caregiver programs, different options that they have at the VA healthcare system. So it'll be really beneficial. It will also be programmed on our local TV stations. So if people can't make it, they can watch the presentation and learn about those things. But people can ask questions. I think it'll be an outstanding thing for our community. And then just some things that are coming up. We continue up this weekend. I'll be working with Wreaths for the Fallen, and then also Gold Star families. Gold Star families are individuals who have lost their loved one in war. And so what we do is we host an annual meal for them at Camp Ripley, so they can go place the wreath on their loved one's grave, and then they come over and we make them a nice warm dinner. So I'll be helping a little bit with that, and that's always a very heartwarming meal and event to attend. And then also going to the Citizens Committee group at Camp Ripley, and then working on managerial stuff, appraisals and stuff for my department, which actually will probably be pretty excellent this year because they did an outstanding job once again. And then we've got a memorial project in Upsala I've been helping with, and then next year some of the Upsala group is working on a trip to get some veterans to go to Washington, D.C., and they've invited me, so I may go, because I've never been there, and I really want to see Washington, D.C., so I may see if I can partake on this as well, but that's a neat trip that may be coming up soon. And also, what else do we've got? Just trying to do some more things to educate the community and just continue that on different benefits that we have out there, and strive to continue to track all of our statistical information and provide resources for our people. So that is what we've been doing a lot. It's been super busy since I've been back, but it's been wonderful to be back and helping people. So,
Well, welcome back. And again, I'm glad that you are moving around without your walking stick, even though you might need it on long trips. Questions from the board for Kathy?
Not really, thank you.
Thank you very kindly. Good report.
Thanks, Kathy. Merry Christmas.
Amy's not here yet. Here, should we take just, okay. I think what we will do is we will take a short break. Amy from Land Services is on her way from the Government Center, and that is our next hot topic, is the Land Services report. So we'll take just a couple 5-minute break or something here. Started once again. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning.
Bill?
I am well, and you?
Wonderful. Thank you very kindly. And now we can continue with the Land Services report.
Okay, so I have all sorts of things for you today. The first thing we're going to talk about is the approval of the 2019 Aquatic Invasive Species Plan. Every year we need to submit a plan to the Department of Natural Resources. So this would be for the year 2019. We did visit about this at a planning session about some possible changes to our plan for this year. And I have Galen, our shoreline specialist, here to go through the changes. So the plan essentially is the same with a few different changes, and I'm going to have Galen highlight those for you.
Good. And good morning, Galen.
Good morning. Yeah, as Amy said, the plan's fairly similar to last year. As far as the changes, the first change that takes place is on page 4, and that's that management of invasive species we had talked about in the board planning session. And this change gives us and those grant applicants the ability to for us to give them money to manage the aquatic invasive species in their bodies of water. So we've had requests, as we mentioned, to to treat AIS, and we weren't able to do that. This change will allow us to do that if we wish. And it's pretty broad, but it talks about monitoring, prioritization, and then also management strategies, and then possibly restoring native species if they're able to. And of course, that would be done in conjunction with the DNR as well, since they manage aquatic vegetation. The other changes in here would be on page 6. This is Appendix A, the DNR list of infested waters. This year, actually fairly recently, Crookneck was listed as having zebra mussels and Eurasian water milfoil. I did contact the DNR just recently and asked them about that, and they themselves identified these species in Crookneck. If you remember, Alexander had zebra mussels, or a zebra mussel pulled out this year, but the DNR themselves didn't discover that an individual mussel, and so they can't say that it isn't in fact infested. So they have a pretty stringent process for listing a lake, but Crookneck is new to our list. The last change in the plan would be on page 10, and that's the list of lake service providers in Morrison County, and I got that off of the DNR's list, and I just updated the businesses in Morrison County as a reference for people that are interested.
And
So
is that
those are
it?
the changes to the 2019 plan, so I'm looking for approval of that for then submittal to the DNR.
And I would look for a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second?
And further discussion from the board?
Weird buffer stuff.
Hearing none, those in favor? Excuse me.
Yep,
Excuse
I'd
me,
like
I'm
to-
sorry.
I'd just like to mention thank you for sticking more money in and working with the AI, to do the treatment of the waters. That's kind of what it was set out to do, along with training, and I think the funds are high enough now that we can do that, so
Well, that's the beauty of an annual plan. We can revisit this every year, so.
thank you for that.
And thank you for the discussion. Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
Okay, and then we're going to talk about the buffer law. That's been a year since we've had that. I'm going to.
Thank you, Galen.
All right, so it's been a year since we accepted jurisdiction and enforcement of the buffer law. So we just wanted to check in with you to let you know what's happening on that front and what kind of activity we've had as far as for enforcement, but then also for the level of compliance that we had with this buffer law in Morrison County. So again, Galen heads up that program. So I'm going to let Galen go through a few things on these handouts with you.
Yeah, so for starting in 2017 into the 2018 season, we had, as of November 1st, which was the kind of the start date for everybody to make sure they had their buffers in, at least for the 50-foot buffer. Based on what Soil and Water had put together, they had 12 parcels that were non-compliance or needing further investigation. After some time there, then only 11 parcels were actually forwarded to the county. 3 of those had a notice of violation, and that's one landowner. So the compliance rate is really high for Morrison County, and Helen had mentioned that right away is, Morrison County is doing just fine. And we're actually working with that landowner as well. He's working within the allotted time that we've set for him. And then there's been no criminally cited or APO served property. So seems to be, and that's kind of showing Soil and Water's work. They're the ones working with the landowners directly and working with them towards compliance on the front end. But we met with Soil and Water and just kind of came up with a flow chart to help us kind of work through how things are handled once we, come in contact with the property that's non-compliant. And if you want to pull up that flow chart, there's kind of 2 ways that we come in contact with properties. Either we're contacted with a complaint. The county, my office, our office, is contacted with a complaint, or Soil and Water through their buffer tracking observes a property that's non-compliant or needs a review. And from there, there's a lot that Soil and Water actually does. So they're the first contacts. They're going to work with the landowner to try to get them in compliance before sending them over to the county. And based on talking with Bowser, they're just looking for compliance. They're not looking for the enforcement piece of it or enforcement side of it, as long as that landowner is willing to comply. And so there's a lot here that Soil and Water is going to be handling right up front. Once that landowner is kind of not willing to comply, that's when the Soil and Water hands it over to the county, and we issue a notice of violation and set them a deadline, and then work with the county from there. So Soil and Water should be recognized for the amount of involvement they're going to have in this process. It's kind of from the beginning, I've told Soil and Water that I'd be willing to work with them going out and flagging properties and stuff like that. So we've been working, real hand in hand, and actually kind of initially, if Soil and Water couldn't get or make contact with the landowner, they would let me know, and then I'd try from my side as well, from a non-enforcement side. So I'd just be sending a letter, more of an informational side of it, saying, hey, we're trying to get a hold of you and we don't want this to go any further. Can you let us know? So hopefully this flow chart really lays it out for you and lets Soil and Water and our office kind of know how to handle properties.
So we've been doing this for a year, but the thing that we're realizing is this is an ongoing, so Soil and Water has now, since we've kind of done that first push to evaluate all properties in Morrison County, now it's that continued monitoring of all of these properties. And so when Galen says this is what they're going to do, that means moving forward, now we have to regularly evaluate all of these again, because just because they were found compliant a year ago, things change all the time, and so we're in that ongoing monitoring phase, and so we will continue to probably have some properties that we're working with all the time on buffer law enforcement.
Right. And that's the second page there, that's the tracking that Soil and Water came up. This is actually required, the state statutes, and so Bowser asked each Soil and Water district to come up with a map or a plan to either review every parcel on a 3-year basis, or to break the county up into segments, and so you're reviewing a portion of the county at each year. And that's what Amy's talking about, is coming down the pipe, your compliance rate's really high, but each individual parcel can change depending on land management and ownership and all that.
So this is the Soil and Water Conservation District has opted to divide the county up into 3 segments, and so those segments will be reviewed on a 3-year rotating basis. So every year they'll be reviewing portions of the county, and that map will be really the areas that they'll be working in each of those 3-year cycles. So.
But Galen or Amy, would you also agree that what we have here is property owners in Morrison County, perhaps, along with Soil and Water, along with Morrison County, have been doing this practice for years already, for a big portion of it? Not everybody, but for a big portion. So that actually made Galen's job, if you will. Thank you, Soil and Water. And thank you, property owners, right along the way. Made the job a whole lot easier and continues to make that easier, or am I out of line? Am I wrong?
I think you're right. It just wasn't ever stated as a requirement. But yeah, based on what Soil and Water is observing, whether it was because of the topography of the landscape, you have water bodies, and maybe next to it's a marshy area that you couldn't farm anyway, or whether it was intentionally we're going to leave in an area that we're not going to be farming. It's definitely turned out that most properties were in compliance.
And the fact remains, it's a state law. The buffer law is a state law. Like it, dislike it, it doesn't make any difference. It's a state law, so very good.
I think when we decided to take jurisdiction, it was kind of the unknown as far as we really had no idea what the workload was going to be, what the compliance rate was going to be. So we were very pleased to see that most of the individuals in Morrison County already had it in buffer. And then actually the handful of people that needed to get in buffer were quite cooperative.
Yeah.
So now it's just ongoing maintenance, I guess, of this program. So just wanted to touch base with you on that since we've been doing this for a year now.
Good report.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Thank Thank you, Galen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Galen.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item I have is to consider the conditional use permit for Keith and Teresa Ripplinger. And that's to expand to a Tier 2B feedlot, including conditions. This was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission with 7 conditions. And those conditions are abide by local and state law, notify road authority when hauling manure during road restrictions, abide by the good neighbor, stormwater, and feedlot odor minimization plans, plant and maintain a 50-foot wide grass buffer around the perimeter of the barn after construction for ongoing stormwater management. On-site stockpiling of solid manure shall occur upon the stacking slab. Feedlot owner shall notify receiving field owners of the usability of soils for stockpiling, or unsuitability of soils for stockpiling, excuse me. The feedlot owner shall notify the feedlot officer of manure cleanout, and prior to stocking the new barn, the open lot adjacent to the stream shall be abandoned, and the remaining lot shall be roofed.
I would look for a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Oh, go ahead.
Got a motion and a second, and further discussion. Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
Thank you. All right, the next item I have is to consider the adoption of the Chaminade and Crookneck Lake Flood Protection Ordinance. This also was recommended for adoption by the Planning Commission. In the meantime, I also did receive conditional approval from the DNR for that this substantially meets the state law, and so I am looking for adoption of that ordinance.
I would look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on the Crookneck Chaminade Flood Protection Plan. Further discussion.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to say, what this has done is this has given the opportunity for the people that are flooding out up there to do some things with their property, and this is only good for 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's correct.
And so that's something that we've tried to do to change some of the rules and regulations a little bit, that they can do some work on their property if they choose to. So, thank you.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, and Amy and the rest of the board understands that this is something like we're just not approving or not approving. We've had many of meetings with Chaminade ourselves here, so again, we gathered quite a bit of information about this.
Yes.
Further discussion. Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
All right, thank you. Then I'm going to bring Jean, our county assessor, up. So the next item I have is to consider the conditional use permit request for David Kloss and Blanchard Solar LLC. This is to allow a 10-megawatt solar farm. This also was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission with 6 conditions. Those conditions are the property owner and/or property lessee shall develop and implement a stray voltage monitoring plan for the areas within the vicinity of the solar farm. This plan shall be submitted with the land use permit application for the solar farm installation. A decommissioning bond is required to be in force for the duration of the productive life of the solar farm and shall not terminate until the site has been fully decommissioned. The bond shall cover Morrison County and shall be in the amount of $50,000 from year 1 to 14. Then the bond shall increase to the amount of $300,000 at year 15 and beyond until the site has been fully decommissioned according to the submitted decommissioning plan. A 65-foot wide vegetative buffer consisting of a minimum of 3 rows of 6-foot tall evergreen trees shall be planted and maintained along the property lines adjacent to residential dwellings. The buffer shall be placed on the outside of the solar farm security fence. A planting plan shall be submitted with the land use permit application for the solar farm installation and must be established prior to completion of construction. The property owner, property lessee, shall submit a plan to mitigate dust generation during construction. This plan shall be submitted with the application for land use permit. If the solar farm is not constructed by September 1, 2019, a cover crop shall be established on the solar installation site by September 1, 2019, and notify the Land Services Department of any change in property or facility ownership during the project life.
I would look for a motion.
Also move, Mr. Chair. Further discussion.
Got a motion, I would look for a second.
I'll second for more discussion.
Got a motion and a second, and now further discussion. And Commissioner Wincher,
Start on
this
me,
is,
Ed,
this
way
is
down.
your area,
All right.
your district, so you seconded it. So
right.
why don't you take off?
Well, again, this kind of has a little bit to do with it, but at the Planning Commission a couple of weeks ago, a couple of residents at the public hearing brought up that I should abstain from voting, and because there's a conflict of interest, and I want to make sure this is for the record. I don't know where this came from or what the hell what they're talking about, but excuse my French, but my land is probably, as the crow flies, 4 miles away. You have to cross Highway 10, you got to cross the railroad tracks and the river, so I had no idea why they would say that I had a conflict of interest. Then my nephew was brought into it, who has land in Benton County. He's approximately 5 miles away, 6 miles away, and again, he's got to cross the railroad tracks and 10, and again, I just have no idea. I have no land, I have no relatives that I know of in this area that I have any reason why I should abstain from this vote. So again, I want that for the record. Moving on as far as what the Planning Commission mentioned, and again, I think they did a great job as far as what they had to work with, as far as, trying to weed out what's amongst what they can do, what they can't do. But this decommissioning, and I'm looking at it and reading it probably for the 10th or 20th time here, they're the ones that are bringing up this decommissioning, which I'm assuming that they, want to have it taken down at the life expectancy of this process of once the solar farm loses its value or whatever. The figures that they gave, and I'm a little flabbergasted. They said it's going to be worth over $1 million 20, 25 years from now. I don't know how they arrived at that figure. Are they looking at the stock market or whatever? I just can't see them projecting what this value is going to be on this. I mean, if there's more solar farms out there, then maybe the value of this solar, if there's continue making them, I'm assuming the product will go down. That's just one thing I have about this. Another thing is, too, and again, the solar farm, and I drove out there, I'm sure the rest of the commissioners, there's a lot of good things too that can, come about this here, so the wind blows in the springtime, and they say you can't even see anything out there. The dust is so bad. I'm assuming this would bring the dust levels down, and again, it's environmental friendly as far as what it does for the energy moving forward in this world, that have the green air and that sort. So again, there's positives to this too. As far as my take on this here, I'm looking at that I personally am going to take a different angle on this here. We keep on stressing it's a solar farm. It's going on ag land. And if that's the case, we should treat it as a farm. So this would be a new facility going up, and it's producing some type of, it's not like putting up a shed or a storage or whatever. This is producing some type of energy or whatever it is for the local businesses, for the Blanchard Dam and that sort. And the Planning Commission, Mr. Chair, they tried, looking at putting setbacks on that. But if somebody puts up a ag facility, we require 600, and please, Amy, question my, if it's a Tier 1, 660 feet from the nearest resident. Am I right on that?
Yes, animal holding areas need to be 660 feet from the nearest non-feedlot residence.
Okay, and if it's a Tier 2?
1,000 feet.
1,000. So again, this is, this is a large facility. A Tier 2 facility probably takes up maybe an acre at tops, maybe 2. Here we're talking, over 90 acres. And then they also, when we do a manure management plan for farmers, we require them where are they going to dispose of their manure? And I think it's like 800 acres or something like that per Tier 1, am I right on that one?
Depending on the nutrient value, generally what we see for manure management plans, and this would be tier 2, is typically what we've been seeing in the scene. We're looking at about 700 to 800 acres.
Okay. So in their plan, I'm looking at this, they said that they're going to dispose of it. It doesn't say when we do a manure management, we ask them, okay, where are you going to take this manure? And it doesn't say here, yeah, they're going to take it down. It doesn't say where they're taking it, So are they taking it to the landfill 25 years from now, 3 years, 5 years from now? And I think that's very important too, because again, in their Cypress Creek's decommissioning, they're the ones that are bringing this forward. And I don't see that in this plan, that are they gonna take it to the landfill? Are they gonna take it the next door neighbor? And the value is I think for me, hard to say, okay, is it gonna be worth like a 20-inch or a 50-inch flat screen TV was 10 years, $10,000? Well, you can buy them for under $500. They're projecting that this steel and solar is going to be worth $1.5 million. I have a hard time digesting that that figure on there. So I guess based on this information, I just think this plan, in my book, does not meet the smell test. That's all I got.
Further discussion? And I might as well go right down the row. Commissioner Lemire?
Sure. One of the problems I have is I can't believe that a company that designs solar systems would say this is a good spot surrounding 2 residential homes. They could go across the road, still be intrusive, but it would be better than where they're having it now. With that being said, I also believe in private property rights, and Mr. Kloss pays his taxes, and he has a use for his property, and this is the use that he chose to move forward with. It's recognized in our comprehensive land use plan and our land use control ordinances. It allows solar systems in ag land. And, to me, I don't think solar is efficient. I think it's a feel-good thing. But with that being said, politicians have forced power companies to find alternative methods to creating energy. They're banning nuclear power plants, they're banning coal power plants, and they're also handcuffed, too, on providing power with renewable energies, and this is one of their ways to provide that power. I believe Minnesota Power is a good neighbor, and I wish they would have been more involved with this in the Planning Commission, because I don't know if they would allow or support the placement of this. But as I said before, I believe Mr. Kloss has his property rights, and he should be able to do on his property what he believes is the best for his property. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Lemire. Mike?
I had to struggle with this. The Planning Commission that night when they looked at this, I think there was so much information they had to go through. And when they got to question number 2, the request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other properties in the immediate vicinity for the purpose already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for the use in that area. And that's when they came up with all of these restrictions and conditions on this property. So I feel that question right there is that I have to say that I'd have to answer that no. And on this sheet, if there's any of these 5 questions that are answered no, it doesn't go through. They gave you the conditions and why they did what they did. I look at this property, I know it's in our land use ordinance that solar can go on ag property, but it's kind of like if we put up 3 livestock barns there. I look at that the livestock barns, they fit in that area. I'm not against solar on agriculture land. That's not it. I'm against solar on this piece of land, because of the homes around it and all the other things that these gentlemen, because I agree with everything they've all said. We work real hard on trying to, sometimes I get a little offended when I get the emails and stuff like, we're not doing anything. we can't talk about things a lot of times when we're in our investigation. We all came out and drove through the area and looked at things, but there's some things where our hands are tied that we can't tell you what we're going to do, what we're not going to do until we're in this format. When there's more than 3 of us, it's an illegal meeting. You know, so, but I do want to say that I know that these guys all look at everything that comes to this board. They can all choose to do what they want to do for the reasons that they want to do it. We all look at it differently, but that's how I look at this. I look at that number 2 question alone, I can say no to. I can add a lot of things. I'm not against solar. I'd like to see solar, but I think there's other places that we can put it in Morrison County at the moment. So thank you. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Blaine, do you have a comment? I'd be surprised if you wouldn't. That's inside. That's just the inside joke.
That's the inside baseball. Mr. Chair, I looked at this issue because I seen how emotionally charged this proposal became to a number of people. And I'll just preface it, first of all, it doesn't really matter how or what I think of solar, how much I know about solar or anything like that. When I first looked at this issue, as a farmer myself, my first concern was a point that was brought up at the Planning Commission in the sense that we have a responsibility to protect vital agricultural land, the high-quality agricultural property. And so I looked at this as, is this endangering that? Because as a farmer myself, I think that's an important responsibility for this unit of government and others. Putting my own personal feelings aside, I then had to go to look at what we have in law in Morrison County. So what is in our statutes, what is in our ordinances, and after reviewing this, I find that this opportunity for Mr. Kloss to ask for the right to do this on his own property is certainly within the bounds of what we have in our county ordinances. He has every right to do that. It is even under Section 604.4 that this is one of the permitted uses with performance standards, which has been what has been laid out by the Planning Commission. And it says right in 604 that we promote and protect areas with high-quality agricultural lands, but also recognize the fact that there are permitted uses within those lands. And on page 56 under 604.4, ground mount solar energy systems has been listed. It would be difficult for me to then try and move forward and say that I know what's best, or this unit of government knows what's best for Mr. Kloss's personal property. And I'll subtract Mr. Kloss from this example and put myself in that position. I'm a small government kind of guy, and And I would be very uncomfortable with expanding the role of government, even county government, to then come in and tell me what is the best use for the property that I own, operate, and pay taxes on. If I'm operating that property within the bounds of the law and within the ordinance of county government, I should have the ability to do the things that I want to do. I think we go into dangerous territory where we start to trump those rights of personal property owners. I say these things with great respect to the neighbors. I would not necessarily be overly comfortable with having a 10-megawatt solar system built so close to my residence. That being said, what is in our practices that guide this board has been adopted, and it is by those documents that I would have to look with favor to the applicant's request. That does not mean that I would not look to address what has been placed in this document by past administrations and look at the fact that maybe we need to have discussions on this. We recognize the fact that other local units of government and other counties may have decided that there is enough solar in their county, there is enough wind in their county, there is enough hog feedlots in their county. That is the responsibility of us at this table, that we will, along with taking input from the public in Morrison County, that we will look at these land use ordinances as we go forward. Mr. Chair, that's my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Blaine. And quite honestly, as chair, I could simply say ditto to each and every comment that's been made by this board, and I will. However, I too have to add just a tiny bit to it. I've received plenty of phone calls. Yes, physically, I've been to the location. I've talked to enough people. Maybe not enough, but I've talked to several. I was certainly present at the Planning Commission meeting. Received a call recently that said the people of the powwow grounds weren't notified. Maybe they weren't. Who are the people of the powwow grounds? I will tell you that I followed through with that and found out that the ownership, if you will, from Amy, that yes, there was a letter. What they did with that letter, ladies and gentlemen, I can't tell you that. But to pretend to say that this board, the Planning Commission, our Land Services Division, rubber stamps everything that comes through here is really, truly an injustice, and I'm kind of embarrassed to even have to say that. But I had to say it. I totally agree with Commissioner Wilson when he says criteria question number 2, but I have to follow that up with criteria question number 3 and ask about the surface water, not the air quality so much, but then I have to follow it further to the Mississippi Headwaters Board if there's a bluff in the area, which I was told, and would that have any bearing on it at all? I don't know that. Also, in regards to Commissioner Blaine, I fully agree that Mr. Klaas has every right in the world to do what he wants to with his property. Our comp plan says he can. I also was present at the Planning Commission and heard from residents. And when does it stop to say, if you have everyone speaking against something, no one speaking for something, that it is, in fact, rubber stamped that it's going to happen anyway? I don't know. But I listened to that testimony. I'm not comfortable with the decommissioning plan. Quite honestly, I don't know if I'd be comfortable with it if it said $1 million. I have just a little tiny bit of an issue with the tree buffering that says that the property owner is going to maintain the trees. What happens if they don't? Maybe it's a stupid question to ask. What happens if they don't? I wasn't born yesterday, but I know that you just can't stick a tree in the ground and expect that it's going to grow without the proper water and nutrients. What happens if they don't maintain it? And quite honestly, there's also, I've read plenty that's been given to me, that there's also a Minnesota law about decommissioning that I'm absolutely not clear on at all. And like the rest of the board, I think I've probably talked enough. So I would look to the board for further discussion. We have a motion on the table, and a second, and I would look to the board for further discussion.
Mr. Chair, Amy, I have a question for you. I know the rules that we have in our ordinance. This number 2 question, the conditions and use criteria questions that I read before, that comes from the state, right?
No.
Okay.
No, those are questions that are within our Morrison County Land Use Control Ordinance. When it comes to Planning Commission, that the board can decide under what criteria they will grant a conditional use permit. Those are the questions that the board has directed to be in the ordinance and the criteria in which you will grant.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Amy, if it passes or denies, and if I'm voting yes or no, and that the 65-foot buffer, would I would say, you know what, before we take a vote, I would like a condition added to this? Would that be fair, or do we say yes, it passes, or no, it passes, then I won't have to add it? I guess you know where I'm going.
No, you'd certainly want to have some discussion about different conditions, additional conditions, anything like that before you would vote. You'd want to be keeping those conditions in mind as you're voting.
And related to Commissioner Blaine, where, yes, Dave Kloss, does have his, and Diane, I won't forget you, they have their right to do this, but if I were to say yes, maybe, I don't know, I would like us, just like we do with anybody who puts up a hog barn, chicken barn, we give them a setback from the nearest residence. And I personally would like a 660-foot buffer from that residence moving forward. Because again, that's in Commissioner Jelinski. We had a lot of people here opposed of it. So again, try to find a happy medium. I think that would be a condition that we should add.
Mr. Chair, if I may jump in here, I am concerned about that type of condition because a feedlot is different than solar, as we know. And in our ordinance, there are setbacks for feedlots that are prescribed distances.
Correct.
But I think we also have setbacks for solar in our ordinance that are prescribed, don't we?
Correct. Not from residences, from the property line is what those
So
are.
we do have setbacks in our ordinance for solar. So if you're proposing a condition that goes far beyond what's in our ordinance, I think this board needs to do some work justifying that. There has to be a nexus. It has to be tied to health, safety, or welfare. And I haven't heard that yet.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Brian, or the applicant would agree to that.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
And I believe the applicant is here, Mr. Chair, just to let you know that they are present.
And I have to be, I have to be very honest. I'm just not thrilled with the decommissioning piece. And I don't really know whether I vote yes, no, or in between, what that value is for the decommissioning. I listened to Commissioner Wincher at length just now explain his theory on the decommissioning. I was also at the Planning Commission meeting, and I pretty much heard the owner of the solar farm, if you will, or the company, tell the Planning Commission this is what we would use for a figure, more than I heard the Planning Commission say this is what we want to hear, or this is what we want for a number. So I would need to have that readdressed at the very, very least. And I have no idea what it needs to be, but I would start with $1 million of a bond for the decommissioning. To be a condition.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, the setback from the land is 25 feet, correct? That's what's in our ordinance?
From the property line, yes.
But yet, so our attorney states that, okay, if I'm stating 660 feet, but yet the planning commission said 65 feet. What's the difference between, they're conditioning it beyond the 25 feet. Why can't I condition a little bit more?
Right. Well, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I have to defend your decision in court, and if that decision is challenged, I have to give a rational explanation for such a major difference between what's in our ordinance and the condition you're proposing. There has to be a nexus of some kind. I mean, that what the Planning Commission did is simply a minor difference between what our ordinance requires and what they're proposing, and I think even the applicant agreed to that distance, 25, 65 feet. My concern is 660 or 1,000 is so far beyond what is in our ordinance, we need to justify that. There has to be an explanation for that decision in the record for me to defend that in court.
Does the board have any other questions, concerns? Does the board have any questions that they want to ask of the applicant?
My question would be then, would they be okay with the setback of 660 feet, not from the property line, from the nearest closest residence? And I don't know who I addressed that to, Cypress, I'm assuming.
And is there someone from the applicant present? And this is not a meeting of we're taking comment. The board can ask the question. And if there is, if they wanted to come up to the podium here and address that. And if you don't wish to address it, that's fine too.
So I'm with Cypress Creek.
Please come to the podium.
Oh, sorry.
And
Thank you
state your
very,
name-
very kindly.
And state your name, please.
My name is Matthew McCaffrey. I'm from Cypress Creek Renewables.
Thank you.
So appreciate your concerns. 660 feet is really a lot, and that's not something we can offer. We chose this site based on the amount of megawatts and megawatt hours that we want to produce for M Power. We have a little bit of flexibility. We have a little bit of extra acreage to play around with, which is why we're able to firstly offer these setbacks as well as have the landscaping buffer. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking we could do a 100-foot setback from residences, and that's something that I can offer to try and get you comfortable with it, but 660 feet really impacts the actual facility and doesn't make it viable for the contract that we have with M Power.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Does the board have any other questions or concerns, comments? I will then ask for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye. And if I heard right, we have 2 in favor and 3 opposed. That motion fails. Our next item of business, I believe, is the corrections report.
Mr.
Excuse me.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Do they need to, so this was to grant, and that failed. Do they need to take a vote to deny?
I think so. Mr. Chair, members of the board, the motion was to approve the application, and that was voted no.
Yep.
I think there has to now be a motion to deny. And I think we would need some explanation from the board as to which of the conditions that are not conditions, but which of the criteria questions are not being met and why. In order for me to defend that decision in court, especially when you're going against the recommendation of the Planning Commission, we need written findings of fact to justify your decision, and so we need to know what is not being met, which criteria are not being met in the ordinance, so we can defend that decision.
So those are the answers that you want as criteria answers. You don't want another motion? Or
I think it would
please
be
help me.
helpful to have a motion
A motion that says what?
denying
Okay?
the request, and the basis for it would have to be provided to us as part of the
Through discussion. I would look for that motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, and now I would look for discussion in regards to the criteria questions that were asked that are asked by the Planning Commission. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
What criteria is not being met by the applicant?
Commissioner Wincher, we might as well go down the line.
That's fine with me. We'll go back to question number 2, the decommissioning. That one, I don't believe is met. They state, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, that it's going to have a value of a little over $1 million. If it has a value of over $1 million in the commission, a $50,000 bond, if you will, is what, less than 0.5% of what that would cost to decommission. And then I'm going to go back to what you do. If the owner, Cypress Creek, my question would be to Amy, what would be the penalty or whatever if they decide they don't want to renew that $50,000 bond? Or again, it's coming up to a $300,000 bond in 5 years. So after 5 years, if they decide, well, we don't want to do the $300,000 bond, what is their penalty?
Well, if the conditional use permit is conditioned that happen, it would be considered a violation of the conditional use permit, and then we would treat that as a violation of their conditional use permit, and then within the ordinance, there's an array of corrective actions up to and including the board revoking the conditional use permit.
And our attorney mentions that, well, it's within their feasible as far as, we can't do the setback. Am I okay with saying, you know what, I'd rather have this money put in an escrow account if we were to approve it? And I don't know, would that be something that we could do? Rather than give me a $50,000 or $300,000, I'd like that total amount in a escrow account. And I don't know if they can do that or not. Would that be a question I want to ask the applicant before we move on?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, our ordinance does provide for that as an option, an escrow account.
So would if I may, Mr. Chair, to ask the applicant, would you be able to put a $300,000 escrow in the county for decommissioning at the time of whether it deceased? In paragraph 1 of your decommissioning plan, it says the land lease expires or is terminated, is not renewed or extended. Again, I shouldn't say I would need a $300,000 escrow account for the condition that they put on. Would that be something you could do?
Yes, we can do that.
So you'd pay the cash, you'd put the $300,000 in an escrow account, not a bond and cash.
Correct. We can put cash in an escrow account.
Thank you.
Okay?
Mr. Chair, the current motion on the table is a motion to deny. So I'm kind of, right now I did put, Brian had asked about the specific criteria questions in which the Planning Commission considered for their recommendation to go to the board. And so I put those up as a reminder to everybody about what to consider, and the question at play was a motion to deny. And so what is it that you would put in place?
Okay,
or what is it
and
you
that's
would-
fine.
Okay,
I guess
just wanted to
moving back
remind-
to that, the plan in this that they are approving does not have anything as far as the decommissioning where this material be disposed of. And I would need something in this plan to show where it goes, where it goes to a landfill or anything like that, and that's not in there, and that would be my reasoning.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I have to go back to question number 2. The request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other properties in the immediate vicinity for the purpose already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant properties for use of predominant in the area. And I can say, I just don't think that's possible. So.
Okay. And I will further that with saying that I also have an issue with question number 2, but I also have an issue with question number 3, and I think that the Headwaters Board would have needed to, the Mississippi Headwaters Board would have needed to play into this. At least the question needs to be asked about the groundwater, surface water. Is there an issue at all that this could cause with the river? Don't know the answer to that question, and those are my 2, is question number 2, and question number 3 is where my concerns fall in. And the decommissioning, if I want to further Commissioner Wincher, I don't think 300,000 is nearly enough. So be it. I'm not exactly sure, looking at our county attorney, if that's what you're looking for.
It'd be helpful to point to some facts in the record that explain the yes or no, other than...
I don't know what the further, for my purpose, for questions number 2 and 3, I think they were yes or no. I don't know that there was necessarily explanation. I can't tell you that.
Mr. Chair, can you offer any reasons for number 2? You talked about number 3 being...
My number 2 is, I think it's going to change the vicinity of the property wholeheartedly. It is a field right now. It is an open field that, yes, has had corn, has probably had beans, maybe has potatoes, I have no idea. But all of a sudden, we're going to take a look at that field, and this is what I heard at that public hearing. We're going to look out our window, and what are we going to see for the next 25 years, I think? We're going to see nothing but reflections of solar fields. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Brian?
That's
a change, a complete change that is unlike anything that we have had, as far as I'm concerned, with changing the looks to property. And then I have to throw it out again, is why do we hold public hearings and ask the public for comment? If the public says yes, it's not an issue at all. If the public says no, well, it's really not enough. Maybe. Maybe not, but maybe. And I do have a little bit of a concern about that. And maybe you can help me with that, Brian, as the county attorney. If we have a group of individuals here that speak out against an event, no one speaking for it, obviously the owner is indirectly speaking for it, does that mean nothing?
Well, Mr. Chair, members of the board, the courts have addressed that. The Minnesota Supreme Court has held that although neighborhood sentiment may be taken into consideration in a zoning decision, it may not constitute the sole basis for granting or denying a permit. We have to use the objective standards that you created and put in our ordinance.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. I didn't know that. Thank you.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, again, moving back to the comment, I know you need something kind of in black and white. Again, the solar farm, is this best used for agriculture? And I don't think it is. And so again, does that constitute a good reason? I mean, I don't want to put you on a spot. You don't have to answer that, but that would be another one of my reasons, that it's just not being used for what agriculture is being used for.
All I can say is the more specific reasons, the better for developing the record.
I would say, to add to that, I would say a solar farm on high-grade agriculture land, as long as there's water on it, that's a big reason to me. I think there's a lot of land in the state that you can put a solar field on to accomplish the same thing that we're trying to accomplish without taking ag land away. So.
Does that satisfy your arguments, Brian? For a following through with the motion to deny?
It does provide a record, yes.
Thank you. Is there anything further from the board?
We need a motion and a second.
We have a motion and a second on the table to deny. Is there anything further from the board? All in favor?
Mr. Chair.
Excuse me?
For clarification, a vote in favor in this vote that you're asking is a vote for denial.
For denial, that is correct. Thank you. Yes.
My apologies. So a yes vote on this vote is a vote in favor of denial.
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So again, I will ask, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes on a 3-2 vote. Thank you very kindly.
To fail.
3-2 vote, it fails.
No, it passed.
It passes to fail. Did I say that wrong again?
To deny.
To deny. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have for you today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Jamie?
Who's corrections report?
Our next item of business is corrections.
I'm going to get a cup of coffee.
Morning.
Good morning, Nicole.
Good morning. Is this on?
Better wait
I'm
a
not
second.
nearly as interesting, I don't.
Did you guys drain that? Did you drain that coffee?
Pretty much. There might be a quarter of a cup in there for you.
Nicole, whenever you're ready.
Oh, he might be switching it.
Excuse me. Oh,
Switching
we got to
discs.
switch discs. Absolutely. We'll take a little
Take a
5.
potty break, maybe.
We'll take a little 5. We will get back to business. And when we left off with Nicole sitting there patiently waiting for corrections.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Nicole.
Today, we have a motion that's necessary to approve the comprehensive plan, which is submitted to the Department of Corrections for pass-through dollars from the legislature, and also the 2019 Department of Corrections budget. You should have both of those in your packet.
We do.
I'm not going to go through the comprehensive plan line for line. As you can see in your packet, it is a very large document. What I will tell you is the 2019 goals for corrections. And those are that anyone who's completing a pre-sentence investigation will have the ability to complete a low-cost domestic violence inventory. It's required in statute that someone complete a domestic abuse assessment. This is a way for us to help people in the community who can't afford that. Oftentimes, if they don't have insurance or something, it can be quite expensive. So we're offering it at a reduced cost at the time of their pre-sentence investigation. We also have created a pretrial agent position, which, as I discussed in planning session, that's someone who can transfer our cases out much faster to avoid warrants being issued for people who can't get back for additional appointments, and to limit the sheriff having to go get them when they do have a warrant, hopefully to help Morrison County with some of those costs. Third, we're going to continue to advance our Thinking for Change group, which is a cognitive behavioral program, and we'll be offering that at no cost to people who qualify for it on our caseloads. And we also have already started using the statewide required Minnesota pretrial assessment tool that the courts, state judiciary had voted on and has required, so that bail studies are uniform across the state. So if you're arrested in Lake of the Woods County, you are determined whether or not you're a risk to return, the same as if you're in Houston County and in Morrison as well. So those are our goals for 2019. If you want me to go into specifics on the comprehensive plan, or if as you read it you had any questions, I would entertain those.
Well, I cannot speak for the board right off the bat, but we did have a planning meeting and we went over a lot of this stuff, and we've had it sent to us. I would look to the board to ask if there was any questions. Any further questions, comments? Nicole, are you looking for two separate motions here, one for the comprehensive plan and then one specifically for the 2019 DOC budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the comprehensive plan.
So that's a second? Commissioner Wincher?
What did I say? So
Moved. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Further discussion by the board on the comprehensive plan. Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
Mr. Chair, I'd also move the budget for 2019.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second, and that is to approve the 2019 DOC budget. Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Nicole, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you very, very kindly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
Our next item is the auditor's report. Deb is here this morning. Good morning, Deb.
Good morning, gentlemen. Mr.
morning, Deb.
Chair. I am here to request that you approve the write-off of the manufactured home tax from 2008 or anything more than 10 years old. Total tax that we're requesting you write off is $1,331.19 plus penalty, interest, and fees. This is basically 3.82% of the total tax we charged that year for manufactured home tax. These are delinquent taxes for basically transient population that we have a lot of trouble tracking down. And
Look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion.
The only discussion I'd like is for people to understand that these mobile homes are almost like an automobile sitting around. People leave them behind, and that's why the taxes are going off, because we can't find them and stuff. So, thank you.
And again, like many, many things that we vote on here that come before this board, this was brought to planning year after year after year, and will continue. And it's been beat up pretty good at our planning meetings. And it's just not a rubber stamp. It has been discussed at length. Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Deb, thank you very kindly.
Do you want warrants too?
Or Steve, or Deb?
all the bills.
Yeah, I second that.
Okay, we've got a motion on the table to pay all of the bills, and this is a roll call vote. I'm going to look to Commissioner Blaine.
Aye.
Lemire?
Aye.
Wilson?
Aye.
Wincher?
Aye.
And myself as an aye vote. Thank you very, very kindly. And Public Works, County Board warrants, Public Works report. Steve is here. I thought I saw you sneak in earlier, and you waited. I appreciate that. Thank you, Steve.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I have 4 items for your consideration. All of these were presented at our planning meeting in detail, and the board is aware of what we have going on here. So the first RBA here is for a donation to Belle Prairie Park from the River Rats 5K run. They'd like to make a donation to the county because they utilize Belle Prairie Park when they hold this run, typically in conjunction with the Little Falls Dam Festival. By statute, the board needs to accept that. They have specified they'd like it to be used for maintaining and enhancing the signing out at Belle Prairie Park for the trail system. And so the resolution would be to accept that and direct the county administrator to receipt it and thank them for their donation.
Would look for a motion.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the second request for board action is related to the completion of the repair of Piers 1 and Pier 2 on the Sioux Line Trail Bridge so that we can make final payment to Eagle Construction. We presented some photos of the work that has been completed for the board's review. It's our recommendation that the board adopt this resolution.
Look for a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion?
If I may, and again, all of us went down there. Steve took us on a little tour to show the completion where their money went. And again, I think it's a great thing for the county. And like I say, hopefully we can finish the rest of this project in over the next few years. So thanks, Steve, for all your work on this one.
Further discussion?
Just a comment, is this part of the funding that we got from Ron Krisha, Representative Krisha?
This would be the other one, which was a grant that we made application for through the DNR, and so that it is separate from the bond. Yes.
Further discussion? Because this is a final payment, this is a roll call. Commissioner Lemire?
Aye.
Wilson?
Aye.
Wincher?
Aye.
Lane?
Aye.
And myself is an aye vote. That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the next request for board action is actually a number of signatures required. We have been working with the City of Piers on the development of their trail system within their municipality. They were successful in obtaining a Safe Routes to School grant for segment 2 that will be constructed in 2021. They have a city match to that grant, and what they're requesting here is that we would support them in making an application for some outside funding that would help them with the match for that federal grant that they've already received. And so we have a resolution that authorizes the chairman and the administrator to sign our agreement, our sponsorship agreement. And basically, we have that sponsorship agreement so that we take on some responsibilities for the city in order to apply for these funds, and this agreement really passes it on to them if there's any cost associated with that. So the first resolution is to enter into that agreement and authorize the chairman and the administrator to sign that. And then the second resolution is to provide support so they can make application for the matching money.
I would look for a motion.
I'll make a motion on that.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The last resolution that we're requesting action on is an update of the prioritization of our bridge replacement list. This essentially is bridges that are deficient within our county. We update this based on structures that have been replaced the previous year. Those come off. There are other structures that throughout the inspection period that takes place, they may become eligible for funding where they weren't previously. We also make adjustments in the construction year that as that gets closer and we have better detail of that. We reviewed this at the planning meeting. We request the board would adopt this resolution. It's also required so that we can make application for state and federal funds if we're going to try to utilize them in the replacement of those structures.
Look for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? I'll throw out just a little tiny bit of discussion other than the fact that we've already talked about this in detail, is the fact that if this is money that we can get from the state, it's safety money. It's rebuilding what we already have, structures that have been in the water forever and are rotted out. and need to be replaced. They're just not being replaced just because somebody found a pot of gold somewhere. They need to be replaced, and there is a list of them, so it's a very positive thing, I think. Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A motion passes. Thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Good, Steve.
Steve Messerschmidt has been waiting patiently in the wings, probably way longer than he thought he was going to wait.
Steve Messerschmidt is always patient.
He's very patient.
Except behind the wheel.
Steve, what do you have for us today?
Well, good morning, gentlemen, members of the board. The first thing I have for you is the levy and budget that you need to approve. As you know, we've met numerous times throughout the year to go over this budget and levy, and we had the public hearing on the 27th of November to discuss this to the public, and now is the time to approve a final levy and a final budget. And we could start with the levy, which is at $18,853,006, which is a 2.19% increase, which is down from the 2.55% that we set at the preliminary levy. So roughly a $70,000 reduction from the original preliminary levy.
I would look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, and Steve is correct, we've met how many times? At least a half a dozen, if not a dozen times. And we look, as the board, in my opinion, we look at all avenues, and I think we came to a very good compromise.
Further discussion.
I agree with Commissioner Wincher. We had many, I think it was more than a dozen actually, but it was quite a few. And this is a 2.19% increase. That's mainly the cost of step increases and health insurance, stuff like that. But also we concentrated on putting more effort towards drugs in our community and helping those out-of-home placements for children.
Further discussion.
I'd like to agree with what Randy and Mike both said. This process is a long time. We do this all year long, pretty much. And we did make cuts. People only see what the final thing is, but we make cuts on what people asked. It's not just a rubber stamp. So I agree that 2.19 with the increases in salaries and steps and lanes, that's pretty good.
Further discussion.
I just want to make more comment. I want to thank Steve for all the work that he did and all the department heads. It's not like other organizations that I've been involved with where they come in with a very high number and what they need and then end up where they want to be. They all come in with a conservative number, and I can probably speak for the whole board that we appreciate that.
Absolutely. Further discussion.
Mr. Chair, this being the first county budget process I've gone through here, my comment would be that I'm glad that at the end of the day we were able to find and direct money to deal with the impending drug problem that we have here and the impact that has on the rest of the budget for the county. And that was an important part of looking forward for me, and so I'm glad that we were able to do that. And I also want to echo my thanks to Steve Messerschmidt for providing us all the data to help us get our arms around this, and your patience with me through the process. So, thank you.
And thank you. I would just like to add one more thing. Other than saying ditto to everything that has been said already, I am so happy that we all got brand-new boxing gloves and that we're well padded so we don't have any marks on our faces, because the budget was not necessarily an easy thing to do, and it did take a lot of time. So I appreciate that all from the board and from everyone, including our administrator, Tabitha, and certainly, yes, Steve, but ditto to everything that the board has said. Further discussion.
Well, just to say, there's a lot of work that goes in from all departments and everybody, and, you know, we've never been one to throw a number out there. We're trying to be as conservative as we can. The first approach, knowing that we don't want to deal with this, it just creates a bigger boxing gloves for later.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct.
Mr. Chair, and I think that direction, I appreciate Commissioner Lemire's comment, that direction comes from the board, and it always has. I think historically, we've been an organization that is conservative, that only taxes what we have to tax and takes that responsibility very, very seriously when it comes to that. And that's been direction that's been provided by boards, as you as a board and previous boards. So I appreciate that. I don't know that every organization and every one of our colleagues throughout the state takes that approach. I can't speak for them, but I know that we do. And I think that serves the constituency well. I think it serves the organization well. So I appreciate that direction and that leadership, because it just helps the process all the way around. So thank you for that.
Further discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote. Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
Blaine?
Aye.
Wilson?
Aye.
Lemire?
Aye.
And myself as an aye vote. Thank you.
And the next motion that I'll need is to approve the 2019 budget, which is $47,182,435, which is a 4.18% increase. The levy, as you know, is just a portion of what we need to get to this 47 million. There's state and federal dollars, fees, and other things. So another motion is needed again to approve.
I'll make
the
a motion
budget.
to approve, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote. Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Blaine?
Aye.
Wincher?
Aye.
Lemire?
Aye.
And myself as an aye vote. That motion passes. Thank you.
All right. The next item I have is, as part of this budget process that we go through, is the 2019 fee schedule. And we had a public hearing for this also on the 27th of November. To discuss this gets talked about in the process from the departments that come in. You look at these fees and go through them and say, is this what you like or not? And this is where we're at, and this is what went to the public hearing. So we need a motion to approve this as well.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on our fee schedule. Further discussion? Hearing none, this also is a roll call vote. Commissioner Lemire?
Aye.
Wincher?
Aye.
Blaine?
Aye.
Wilson?
Aye.
And myself as an aye vote. That motion passes. Thank you.
All right, and then the final item I have is to approve the 2019 Morrison County HRA levy of $32,500, which is the same as it was in 2018.
Look for a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, this is also a roll call vote. Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
Blaine?
Aye.
Lemire?
Aye.
Wilson?
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you very kindly. And Steve, thank you very
That's all
kindly
I
for
have.
all of your time. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
As does the board. And I believe our next item is the administrator. Hello.
Hi.
We're not ignoring you, you know.
I know you're not. I never feel like there are a number of things we have to do on an annual basis. Some of them.
Oh, look at me.
Some of them at the start of a new year. One of the requirements for you as the board is to set an annual salary for commissioners, and you need to do that prior to the beginning of the year. And so for your consideration, the attached resolution is out there. The proposal includes a 3% cost of living, which is extended to the entire organization, and that's what's up for consideration at this time.
Look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote, I believe.
You know, I
excuse me.
do
Sorry.
have a question. I think our last pay raise was 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So it could have been 3, but it was when I got on the board. And so I think it's been about 4 years since we've had the pay increase.
I think you're right. Continuously on an annual basis, I recommend that you keep up with the cost of living that's applied to staff. I think that it's reasonable. I think that if you don't keep up with the cost of living, it makes it very difficult to make up that difference. But it was not approved and was not applied for the last number of years. And I think you're right, Commissioner Wilson, for 4 years. Keeping in mind that this is a salary that's applied without per diems, we've moved from that. And so it's a base flat salary that is applied without any extras outside of reimbursement for expenses, which isn't a wage. I can't
Further discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote. Commissioner Blaine?
No.
Lemire?
No.
Wilson?
Yes.
Wincher?
Yes.
And myself as a yes vote. That motion passes on a 3-2 vote.
All right, thank you. The next one I have is the resolution for the University of Minnesota extension contract that we have. The term is a 3-year term from January 2019 through 21st. This is for those educators, those program educators that we have. The cost is a 2% increase over each of the 3 years. I presume this was discussed at the Extension Committee. Suzanne sent it to us for approval. This is that 4-H program coordinator, extension educator for livestock, the crops, and then the horticulture and small farms. As you know, we have an arrangement with multiple counties. It seems to really work in the area, and it's been a good successful arrangement to get some time and make sure we have focus on this. Yet, obviously, the cost to have full-time dedicated staff in each of these programs would be prohibitive, so it's nice that we can have an arrangement with other counties.
I'd look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion?
If I may, Mr. Chair, this one hits home with me. I mean, I'm into the 4-H. I was all my life, and I believe maybe Deb can help me. We just put the extension educator for horticulture on like 2 or 3 years ago, I believe, something like that.
Mr. Chair, time flies. It's been
a while.
During my tenure, probably within the last 5 years for sure, but Beth was here for a number of years, and so I don't want to guess 3 and have it be 5, but it's been recent.
And that's maybe because of me, because I just so much for the extension of what they do for the kids in this county. Again, it's just a valuable thing that we do, Mr. Chair, for the extension and the University of Minnesota, of which I also sit on the board for the University of Minnesota.
Further discussion? I would just like to add that there are 2 commissioners from this board that sit on the local extension committee, that being myself and Commissioner Wincher, and this stuff has been discussed and gets discussed at length. Further comment?
That one too.
Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Nope, you're good.
Okay. Excuse me. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chair, I have a contract for the Morrison County Public Defender Systems or Services between Scott Wonderlich, a public defender, and Morrison County for the next year. It is 2 years. I'm sorry. I was going to say, I think it's 2 years, and I spoke wrong. I apologize. For 2019 and 2020. The contract is something that we look at on a regular basis. It's been in place for quite some time to be able to utilize his services where needed.
I'd look for a motion.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion? I just have one question. We have to have a public defender by law, by state law, you know?
Yes, we have to enter, hold on a second, because there are 2 of them, and there's one, it's not the CHIPS one. Every other year we consider one, and I get confused,
Okay.
and I didn't look at it.
Okay.
But this is, the Public Defender Services Agreement appointments are made, and it's for the conflicts for attorneys hired by the public defender, and if we have to, Brian's approved this and looked at it, and he's not here to tell you the specifics, and I don't want to dive into it when I don't understand it fully. Brian's reviewed it and recommends approval, and this is the same contract terms that we've had in place. But for details, I'll defer.
And I'm more than well aware that Scott Wonderlich has been our county attorney, our public defender for some time. So Any further discussion?
And Mr. Chair, I believe what this does is allow in conflict cases, Mr. Wunderlich to be able to utilize somebody else. Yes.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. All said aye? Yes, we all said aye.
Did I, oh, did I? I was,
Yes.
aye.
Abstaining or?
I'm not, you know, sometimes.
Our next, go ahead.
And I was right, it's the conflict if there is one. Thank you.
You are. It is.
Sheriff Larson was unable to be here today, but we are taking into consideration or asking you to take into consideration the agreement between Morrison County and Computer Forensic Services for that computer forensic analysis service, or that purchase of that product that they will purchase and then maintain. We would just be the organization that's applying for that.
Look for a motion.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion?
And we had the gentleman come here last week, was it? I think it was.
Yeah.
And this one kind of floored me. It's kind of like, it's not going to cost us anything, and it's not, you know, again, he grew up in this area, and he's coming back to our area, and he's giving their services to the county, and I thank them even though they're not here, and Sean for doing this, and again, it's another great product that we can use in our sheriff's department.
This will put Morrison County a leadership as far as I'm concerned. This is a huge piece to the big investigation puzzle.
Make
Huge.
us way more efficient.
Unbelievable.
Waiting.
It's great. This is a great deal. So further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
Mr. Chair, we're required by statute to not only provide a CVSO for the organization and for the county residents, but there's an appointment process with that. There's certain positions that have statutes that identify that with the service that we provide. And so Kathy Marshik is due to have her appointment for another 4-year term up, and that's for your consideration.
Look for a motion.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to reappoint Kathy Marshik as the Veteran Service Officer from 12/11/2018 for another 4-year term. Got a motion and a second. Further discussion.
You know, I just like to say, I've seen what Kathy's done, and she really works very hard for the veterans. The veterans in our area can be very proud of what you and your office does for them, because I see you helping them a lot.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
All right. Mr. Chair, there's an article within the personnel policy that I'd like you to consider, and that is regarding the Clean Indoor Act regarding smoking in the facility and changing the policy. Now we have a designated smoking area right outside the south employee-only entrance in kind of in the horseshoe parking lot area right next to the building. And what we're finding is that smoke is really getting into the building, and the new air handling system, I think, works very well, even better than what it did. And so it's just causing a bit of a nuisance, and I think we can do better as an organization. So what I'm asking is that there be a change to prohibit smoking 50 feet from any entrance, and that we will create a designated smoking area over by the east side of the garage in that corner house that it's on the complex, it's just on the other side of the maintenance garage, just to be able to allow for all employees and all of the public to have a smoke-free environment as they enter and exit the building. We'll put up no smoking signs where they currently are a designated smoking area.
Look for a motion.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second.
Quiet, you guys.
Further discussion.
If I may, Mr. Chair, the Section 1.05 Clean Indoor Act to reflect the following changes. So that's something that is state law. State law?
No, well, section 1.05 is our
County.
It's our personnel policy.
Okay.
And the Clean Indoor Act is just where we're referencing the state statute when it comes to smoking in facilities and buildings. And this is just a component of that where we're specifying the egress and ingress of the building and where they would smoke.
So, Mr. Chair, are you saying that they can smoke 50 feet away from the door, or that they have to be in the smoking area?
Yes.
Yes, what? Either
Both.
or?
Yep.
Both. So I can be 51 feet away and be smoking this area? Okay.
Yep. At least it then doesn't impact those going in and out of the building.
Right, I thought the way I read it is that you're making a designated smoking area for all your employees.
We're identifying one to allow for them to have a place if they would like specifically to go, which complies with the 50 feet from an entrance, but they don't have to go there. Yeah.
And if I may, and I agree with this kind of, but now if people know about this ordinance, are we going to find more butts because of the fact that they're going to be 50 feet out and there won't be any?
Mr. Chair, it's a personnel policy, so it's not regulating the complex as a whole for the general public. We're asking the general public, we'd ask that they don't smoke right next to the exit and entrance, which is what we do now. But this is a personnel policy, so this is for employees. Certainly, there are different rules for employees of an organization than there are the general public. And so we're just trying to help that concentration of smoke move. I've had numerous requests from employees. I'm responding to that is really what it is. There are many public organizations that have gone to smoke-free campuses, that have gone to tobacco-free campuses. This is kind of a step in between that, where we're not asking, I'm not presenting to you a smoke-free campus in which they're not on property, but we are just trying to ease that nuisance that some employees consider for that directly in front of the door, in and out.
Further discussion? I believe we have a motion and a second on the table. Hearing no further discussion, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chair, that's all I have for official action items for you. I don't know that I have anything else to present. Is there anything you guys have for me?
Is there anything further that needs to come before this board?
Mr. Chair, just as a reminder, tomorrow morning we have the department head meeting in which you're invited. We do have Brian Myers coming back for the strategic planning update. We had started that process. We've been working continuously through the last number of months with the leadership group, and tomorrow we wanted to present, if you're able, the kind of final outcome of what we've talked about. I know at least Commissioner Jelinski can't be there, but Wilson can't be there either, but hopefully those that are able to make it you're an important part of this process.
Yep.
And we'll have to arrange another time if that doesn't work, but wanted to kind of coincide with the majority of the group that's already convening, so.
What time was that, Deb?
8:30,
In that, at the,
IT training room.
IT training room downstairs.
That's where we meet with like the.
Anything further before the board? Hearing nothing, I'd look for a motion to
Go through
adjourn.
schedules, maybe.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. Thank you. Commissioner Blaine?
Where are we going for dates?
What's the dates?
It is going to be
Till the end of the year?
the 16th of December through actually January 5th.
Oh, my God. The 5th.
3 weeks.
There's not much to do for a lot of it.
16th of December. January. My last job in Elmdale is the 16th of Elmdale.
We don't have.
So, Mr. Chair, we have a planning meeting on the 18th.
At
And a
8:30?
reminder that we have the holiday potluck that day, too. So don't forget about that.
What day?
What?
18.
18th, that's at Public Health. That's at Public Health.
Cripes, Lemire. God
can't even
damn.
answer the question.
No, I'm just teasing you. So then,
On the 18th.
we have a board meeting the 31st. On,
Yes, we do.
on January 3rd, I will be at South Country Health Alliance, 9 a.m. Thank you. And on January 4th, we have a Public Works Planning meeting. Thanks for putting that on my calendar. And that's all I have so far.
Commissioner Wilson?
Okay, on the 17th, I've got community development at noon. And also, yep, that's what it tells me here. And then I have, the City Hall would like to know if we could make it to that. They're going to have on Barrett's building for the feed, the new building out there. They'd like to know if we could come and sit in the audience and if there's any questions about that or support at City Hall.
That's on the 23rd, right?
I got it on the 17th.
And what time is that?
What am I wrong?
I have no idea. I said what time?
I don't know for sure.
Will you email that to us?
Yes.
Me?
Yes, I will. Well, it's City Hall, they're, City Council meeting, yes.
Is it a council
And-
meeting or a planning?
No, it's a council meeting, and they're going to be approving or disapproving, whatever.
Oh, the
about.
dog food thing?
Yep.
Oh.
So they would like to know if we could make it to that.
17th?
Yep. And I think it's
it's 7:30.
Okay. I don't know the time.
In the evening?
Yes, here at City Hall. But it's referenced to
But
Beard.
yes, I had it on my calendar, Mr. Wilson.
Tabitha, I'm wrong. I've got community development on the 18th. You're right, on Tuesday. Okay, I got to erase it off of here. All right. Then I've got Airport Commission on the 20th. I've got a planning on the 24th. I think we have planning and zoning.
On Christmas Eve?
Oh, yeah, no, we wouldn't have it the Christmas Eve, no.
They want us to come.
I'm glad we go through this so I can delete all this stuff that I'm not supposed to have.
26th. We do.
I guess that everything's covered.
All the way through the 5th.
Yep. Then Public Works, and he did that one, so. Board of Adjustment on the 1st I've got down. Yeah, Board of Adjustment on the 1st.
First proposal, I don't.
Yeah, I don't think, but that's fine. If you want to.
I'm gonna have it.
Well, that's
New
right.
Year's Day.
It's what's on my calendar. You said to read what's on my calendar. But there is a Board of Adjustment one. We just got an email on that.
Yes, but that's not for that day. That's for the
I'll get that for you.
26th, I think. Just for the, but I'll get there.
What?
I think, because it
Board
is
of
the
Adjustments
26th.
meeting is,
That's right. I remember seeing that.
26th?
The 26th, day after Christmas, we can get together and look at variances.
we can bring some ale.
Gutters?
Is that it, Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemire?
Did anybody, because I wasn't paying attention, did anyone say about Ditch 21 meeting on the 18th?
I don't think so, not yet, not yet. Not yet, but it didn't come to me yet, but you were there.
I was going to get you on that one.
That's also going to be at 8, right at our planning meeting, right?
Yeah, it'll be just following the
What ditch
planning
is it?
session next week.
21.
He said it.
41. And then
Nicely done.
11 o'clock, I have a Citizen Advisory Committee at Camp Ripley on the same day. 19th, there's a drug court at 1:30.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't be there for that.
On Christmas, Planning Commission. Yeah, I have a HRA meeting on the 27th at 6 o'clock PM. It's at Pizza Ranch. And everybody's got the rest.
So I hope that.
Commissioner Wincher?
You know what, yeah, I can't find the Board of Adjustment, but I know Commissioner Jelinski, you'll have it for us.
I'm
So what
hopeful that I'm going to
exactly
have it
is
somewhere here.
Okay, so
Ooh, hope.
he covered the ditch, he covered the planning, and then I have TCC on the 20th. On the 27th, I got soil and water. And they got all of January covered for me.
All right. 30, we got the ditch taken care of, and got the holiday potluck. On the 19th at 10 o'clock in the morning, I've got a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board Executive Committee. At 1 o'clock, the full board meets. At 5 o'clock that evening, I've got a Hands of Hope meeting in Todd County. On the 20th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I'll be in Alexandria at an Armor Owners and Operators meeting. 7:30 that night, I've got Egg Society.
He created that himself.
I believe on the 26th of December, I believe, is a Planning Commission meeting.
Board of Adjustments.
Oh.
Right?
I don't know.
Yes, that's what it is.
Is it Board of Adjustments on the
Adjustments.
26th?
Ah.
Can anybody confirm that one?
I'm trying to find it too. I can't find it here.
The planning commission's on the 26th.
Yeah.
Well,
That
that's
could
just-
be the
Clarify our
Board of
26th.
For Board of Adjustment.
Yeah, it's either Board of Adjustments or Planning Commission, but isn't Board of Adjustments usually at the beginning of the month?
Yeah.
But anyway.
It's kind of goofy here. I can't find Planning Commission. So let's
I
go
don't
back
know.
to the Planning Commission. I'm assuming that is correct. The 26th is the Planning Commission, right? That's what I have here, too.
I'm pretty much positive it
Yeah.
is, yes.
I will send you an email.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
On the 27th at 12:30 in the afternoon, State Emergency Communications Board, I believe that's in Arden Hills. 28th, Christmas, 31st, County Board. Public Works Planning on the 4th. I think that's
Do you have a
everything.
conference call on the 3rd?
I'll bet you I have a legislative conference call on the 3rd.
Couple more
Yes, I
things.
do.
Do we have a?
Planning commission's the 26th.
So who's Darling Township?
That'd be me.
No, Region 5's annual meeting for this, which is this month, is Thursday night, 2 nights from now, at Sprout. And you have it on you had it on the screen here.
Yeah, that's
No,
that.
it won't be on the 27th. Thank you, though.
That's in Darling. That should be Green Prairie.
Must be right on the edge or something.
That's right on.
It's typically the time of month they do it. I don't know if you have it.
Oh, we're not having it because we have one Friday, where they moved it up to the 14th.
Okay. I think that is all.
Yeah, if you can just give me a second.
I am trying to get that
It's in one township.
Planning Commission, I'll have that in just a moment for you.
Like officially for sure, because I didn't see anything.
I just pulled up the Planning Commission, the 26th. Is that what you're talking about?
I don't know.
Hold it up.
I gotta find it.
It was sent.
Email?
I just looked at it, yeah.
Yes,
It's
it
December,
is.
right?
It is December 26th. That's correct.
26th.
December 26th, the day after Christmas.
There's two on there, Darling and Richardson Townships,
That's correct.
but I still can't find Board of Adjustment.
No, I don't think there is a board. I don't think there is a
I'll
Board
ask
of
when it's
Adjustments.
rescheduled to, and I'll let you guys know.
In fact, Board of Adjustments should have been the 4th of December, and it was
I
canceled.
think there was
Right, there was nothing on there, so it
Canceled,
should
so
be the
that would
first
be
week in January. It should
December,
be.
so it would be the first week in January,
Which is a holiday.
which is a holiday, so I don't know when they're having it in January.
Send that email.
But it could very well be on the 2nd if they have it, I don't know.
I will let
Seen that. So, that's our calendars. Gentlemen, is there anything further that needs to come before the board?
I hope we're done with that ditch meeting so we can go to the holiday potluck.
Hey, if I may, on the 4th, is that going to be at Public Works, or is that going to be at the landfill?
Yeah.
4th is at Public Works.
I'll be at camp.
Did you guys hear that?
4th is at Public Works.
Would you rather than having T-SWAC at the landfill on the 4th? On the 4th.
Okay, look for a motion to adjourn if there is nothing else that needs to come
So
before
moved.
this board. Got a motion?
Second.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries.
Well, the
We are
4th is
adjourned
a
at
Public Works meeting.
11:23.
Oh, but don't-